Hi, my name's Vlad. I represent Atlas Weekend Festival, which is the biggest festival in Eastern Europe. It's based in Kiev, Ukraine. It started in 2015, and ever since 2019 we have been attracting more than 500,000 visitors a year. Previous headliners include Fatboy Slim, The Chainsmokers, Prodigy, Kasabian, Placebo, and many others. I definitely feel like the festival is still relatively unknown in Europe, and that's obviously because most of the visitors that we have, it's a domestic audience. It's, I would say, 90% Ukrainians, and then our neighboring countries like Belarus, Russia, and other ones. And for Europe, it still remains relatively unknown, and yet we already have a lot of visitors. First of all, thanks to the fact that we have a lot of people in Ukraine. And we were the first one to construct such a big festival in 2015. The owner of the festival, Dmitro, he was doing this for more than 15 years. We have a venue of our own called Atlas in Kiev, and the festival was called after it. And he did a lot of concerts throughout these 15 years, and by that time he constructed a huge crew, a very reliable team. And it was really hard to keep this festival as a thing, to keep it running for the first couple of years. So until 2019, it might have crashed down at any moment, yet the team was working so hard to make it a real thing. And now we feel like we're at a stable point where the festival is not coming away. Well, the big numbers come from the fact that we do one day for free. And this year we even did 2 free days. And that day everyone is free to come, and it's broadcasted on TV, so it's at this point a kind of a natural celebration. We have like more than 120,000 people per day on the free days this year, and in 2019 we had the record of, I think, more than 150,000 people coming, so that day contributes a lot to the total amount of visitors. Well, we are starting to work with bigger agencies for a couple of years now, so we establish a reputation and put ourselves on the radar. But before, and still even now, it's hard to do the bookings sometimes unless the agent or the artist management realize that this is a growing market. And obviously the economy is very different, and our ticket prices are a fraction of what they are in Europe for a similar type of product. And they do not really understand that this is a rather free market. So if you enter it early, you can grow a huge audience. There are acts like Nothing But Thieves, Bring Me the Horizon, or LP, who do tours almost yearly in Ukraine throughout a couple of cities, and they're insanely popular just because they contributed to that market early. Ukraine is definitely not as oversaturated as Europe in terms of events, and that really helps any artist who tries to enter that market to really stand out and build a huge and very loyal audience. Whenever we have an artist come into Ukraine, they don't know what to expect really. And usually when they leave, it's usually something like the highlight of their tour. The more we work with the agencies, the more they realize what this market is, but sometimes it's very difficult because they would expect us to pay a fee that we definitely cannot handle yet. So as a booker, I have a huge ambition towards trying to introduce new stuff to Ukraine, because a huge part of our festival is catering to what our audience wants. We have a really broad target audience, so we need to bring all the bands they like. We also try to educate people, and for that we always try to book some of the acts that are relatively unknown, the smaller acts that are coming from Europe. We are members of ETAP, which is the European Talent Exchange Program, and that gives us a really nice motivation to book the bands. We would usually go to Eurosonic and all the other small showcase festivals like Sharpe here, look at all the bands, and we try to establish good connections with the embassies and with the export offices. And as soon as we got introduced to the export office and we got things running with them, we're trying to bring more and more upcoming bands every year, because with the help of an embassy it's much easier. So we're trying to establish connections in every country and try bring at least one act that is upcoming from other parts of Europe to make festival more diverse. And there are people who really cherish that in Ukraine because they can hear stuff they never even heard about. And I think it's very important for us to get the message across that Ukraine is absolutely safe at the moment. Sadly, because of how media works and it having this sensational nature, a lot of people still think that Ukraine is not safe. It's very important to get that point across to people in Europe that Ukraine is very welcoming. It's rather cheap to travel to, you don't need visas. There is a festival like ours which acts like a good reason to come, but to be honest, the festival cannot be separated from the country. The festival is inside the city. The city itself is stunning. It's not the only city worth visiting in Ukraine. So what we're trying to do is just not only push the festival, but push Ukrainian tourism in general. That's also one of the reasons of our success, is that the government realizes that we're a huge spot for musical tourism. We really help attract people to Ukraine. They obviously don't help us as much as you can get a lot of help in Europe, but they still help, and they recognize the fact that we are an important part of making Ukraine bigger on the European radar, and I think that contributes a lot.